Hello, I'm Esther Githu. You are welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Former U.S. President Barack Obama tells Democrats that Vice President Kamala Harris is the right choice to take on Republican Donald Trump in the presidential election. The Mpox outbreak in Eastern and Southern Africa prompts the International Organization for Migration to make an $18 million appeal for funding to curb the spread of the disease. And in our technology report, an innovative energy tech startup in Tanzania is revolutionizing the energy industry through cutting-edge clean energy systems. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Former U.S. President Barack Obama addressed Democrats in his home city of Chicago Tuesday, saying Vice President Kamala Harris is the right choice to take on Republican Donald Trump in the presidential election in November. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more from the second night of the Democratic National Convention.
A hometown welcome at the Democratic National Convention for former President Barack Obama.
America's ready for a new chapter. America's ready for a better story. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
Obama drew a direct comparison between Harris and her Republican opponent, former President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris won't be focused on her problems. She'll be focused on yours. As president, she won't just cater to her own supporters and punish those who refuse to kiss the ring or bend the knee. She'll work on behalf of every American. That's who Kamala is.
Obama was introduced by his wife, Michelle, who said Harris's shortened campaign season should encourage Democrats to work even harder to elect her.
We cannot indulge our anxieties about whether this country will elect someone like Kamala instead of doing everything we can to get someone like Kamala elected.
Although Democrats already formalized their nomination process earlier this month, a ceremonial roll call of states.
Great state of Alabama proudly cast 56 votes for the first black woman president of the United States of America.
Showed the enthusiasm of Democrats for their new nominee.
All 34 of our votes for our next black woman and first South Asian president, Kamala Harris.
Harris thanked delegates remotely from her rally in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
So to everyone in Chicago and across America, thank you. Thank you.
Democrats also heard from Harris's husband, who called his wife a joyful warrior.
She'll lead from the belief that wherever we come from, whatever we look like, we're strongest when we fight for what we believe in, not just against what we fear.
The second night of the convention also featured former members of the Trump administration and Republican officials who have endorsed Harris.
Trump made a lot of lofty promises: unlimited economic growth, American manufacturing reborn, a secure border. Turns out Donald Trump was all talk.
On Wednesday, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz will address delegates here in Chicago, formally accepting the party's nomination as vice president. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago.
Joining us now live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago is VOA's Carol Van Dam. Carol, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama really fired up the DNC crowd last night. Tell us more about last night and what to look for on to day 3 of the Democratic Convention tonight.
Well, you can say that again, Esther. It was crazy excitement here. Michelle Obama really brought down the House. I mean, you could see people tearing up in the crowd and just getting super excited. And they did too with her husband, Barack Obama. But it was really emotional during Michelle Obama's speech. And she had a couple of really good zingers and wasn't afraid to take her jabs at Donald Trump, including one when she said, talking about how Trump has in the past said that undocumented workers in this country were taking jobs away from black people. And to that, she said, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking is possibly going to be one of those blacks? So that just one of the examples that brought down the House. When Obama came on, he also had something that kind of fired up the crowd and made a lot of people laugh, was when he said, this convention has been pretty good to kids like us, drawing the parallel with him and Kamala Harris with funny names. And of course his name, and he said, showing that in this country anything is possible. And of course his name being Barack Obama, an African name. His father is from Kenya, his mother is from America. So it was pretty exciting. And to the second part of your question, tonight we're going to hear from Tim Walz, her vice presidential running mate, and the former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has wielded power in Washington, D.C. and the whole country for decades and decades, and was one of the main people who was in President Joe Biden's ear saying, really, you need to think about stepping aside, which he eventually did.
Hey, Carol, we don't hear much from the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, but he had a chance last night. What did you take away from his speech?
Well, before he spoke, there was a pretty emotional video montage that they played, the Democrats, of their family and their relationship between him and his wife, Kamala, and just talking about how she's such a strong person, like you heard, a joyful warrior, he said, but she's always there for when you need her. And, she's always there, too, for when you need her other places, like in Washington. But he said he knew he made the right decision when his two kids started calling her Mamala, which is kind of a nice name for mama, in Africa, in a lot of countries.
And Carol, quickly, who are the other notable speakers who spoke last night?
Well, we heard from Bernie Sanders, who's quite a liberal, known as a very left kind of Senate Democrat, and he it's been kind of a thorn in the side of some Democratic Party leaders because he's been so left of center. But he was in total support of Kamala Harris and her running mate, and said so last night. He also mentioned the protests, and said that we have to demand a ceasefire with the pro-Palestinian protesters. But he said, too, that, both sides, that the hostages have to come home, too, the Israeli hostages.
Carol, many thanks for your reporting. VOA's Carol Van Dam reporting live for us from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Tuesday night brought a series of much anticipated speakers to the Democratic National Convention stage, most notably, as we've mentioned, former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. The two sought to reassure voters that the new Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, is the best candidate to win the general election in November. VOA's Carol Van Dam spoke to convention delegates to find out more.
So while the promise of the protection of democracy is on the shoulders of Kamala Harris, and we fully believe that she will be that person to defend and protect our democracy, the people still have a responsibility. We have to vote. And the message has to be, let's not celebrate until 8:01 on November 5th. And then on November 6th, let's galvanize together and let's govern together.
Young Democrats, we're bringing in the optimism of course, the love thy neighbor. Of course, we're all Americans. And I believe that the Democratic Party can be the umbrella, the tent party for everyone to come into. I think it is able to reach out to a vast a variety of different perspectives.
I think that the polls are reflecting the energy that we felt on the ground when Kamala Harris became our nominee. We had a rally in Arizona a week ago. Energy there was incredible, a great turnout, and just young people are super excited.
And if we know anything about Barack Obama, is that he's a born leader, and he's done a great job with these United States of America in the past, and he's been very active in the Democratic Party, and he continues to do so and tries to unify the party. So his job tonight, as you just mentioned, is to unify who is on the sidelines waiting to figure out what they want to do. So I'm more than confident that that's going to happen.
And I hope that they're going to be, the coalition that he had in 2008 and 2012, that's going to bring those voters in and bring us over the line that we're needing and to turn out that vote November 5th.
We love President Obama, and we believe in him, and we know that he has done a wonderful job. He's so popular, even though he's the former. So yeah, what he has to say matters.
He was the first president who I had the ability to be cognizant of, and I have looked up to him my whole political career. I think him and Michelle have set the standard of what public servitude is post-presidency, and it's extremely important that he comes out in support of Kamala Harris because we know that the Obamas hold significant political force. We know their endorsement means a lot to Americans. Giving him the support of Vice President Harris is very important to signify that the Obama-Biden ticket is moving forward into the Harris-Walz ticket for good.
When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. We believe she shares our vision. As a nurse, I am compassionate. I dedicate my compassion to my patients, to my communities, and that's what she's doing. She is going to win.
As a woman, I am very happy. As a woman of color, I'm very happy about it. As a progressive person, I'm happy about it. I would say this is something which I have been expecting for a long time because I come from a third world country, a Muslim country, it's called Bangladesh, and I have grown up seeing women being the leader of the country, like the prime minister, for a longer period of time.
VOA's Caravan Dam speaking to delegates on the floor of the Democratic National Convention. The United Nations International Organization for Migration says it is appealing for $18.5 million in assistance to provide healthcare services to people impacted by the Mpox outbreak in East and Southern Africa. Amy Pope, the IOM Director General, says, quote, the spread of Mpox across East, Horn, and Southern Africa is a grave concern. Many experts say more needs to be done to get potentially life-saving knowledge on the disease to those who need it most. VOA's Philip Alexiou has more.
At a camp for those who fled violence in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, Justine Mungwiko is soothing her crying baby. She's a woman who needs answers about Mpox.
This skin lesion disease comes from I don't know where. I can't even remember the name of the disease. We were told that it comes after eating game, but neither I nor my child have eaten game. These symptoms just appeared.
Mungwiko's experience highlights one of the challenges as the international community looks to tackle the Mpox outbreak, getting the knowledge they need to protect themselves to those who need it most. Her son is one of approximately 27,000 cases of Mpox in Congo's current outbreak, which began in January 2023, causing an estimated 1,100 deaths, mainly among children. Last week, the World Health Organization declared Mpox an emergency after the disease spread to neighboring countries and outside the continent. But it is communities like Mungwiko's that are the most exposed and in need of support. The right information has to get to those immediately at risk, says Associate Fellow at Chatham House's Global Health Program, Dr. Aberi Okereke.
Communicating with people about what they should do, what they should report, and how they should report so we can understand what's going on quicker and contain it better is critical.
But it's not only those at the Kanyarachenya camp near Goma suffering from a lack of knowledge. Helen Rees, co-chair of South Africa's Mpox Incident Management Team, says that over the past 50 years, there's been a shameful lack of investment to help African researchers understand Mpox better.
We still globally do not have a good understanding of Mpox on the outbreaks, how it spreads, How many asymptomatic cases do we have? For every case that we find with symptoms, we do not have a good understanding.
Back at the camp, there are some efforts underway to inform. On Monday, residents gathered to hear a health worker from aid organization MedAir explain how to avoid infection. "We thought there was no medicine," said one attendee, clutching a leaflet. "I'm glad to hear it's curable." Philip Alexio, VOA News.
The juntas of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger say they have written to the United Nations Security Council to denounce Ukraine's alleged support of rebel groups in West Africa's Sahel region. In their letter to the Security Council, the foreign affairs ministers of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso asked it to take responsibility for Ukraine's actions and to prevent subversive acts that threaten regional and continental stability. Ukraine has repeatedly called the allegations groundless and untrue. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have turned their backs on traditional Western and regional allies in favor of Russia since their juntas took power over the past 4 years. Ukraine attacked Moscow on Wednesday with at least 11 drones shot down by air defenses in what Russian officials say was one of the biggest drone strikes on its capital since the war in Ukraine began in February 2022. Ukrainian forces say they destroyed 50 of 69 attack drones launched by Russia during an overnight strike. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb has more on the war.
Russia's Kursk region on the border with Ukraine under attack. Ukraine destroyed multiple bridges in the region this week to block supply routes. Russia firing back into the Ukrainian border region of Sumy, damaging cars but causing no casualties. The Pentagon now seeing indications that Russia is moving small numbers of forces into Kursk to repel the Ukrainian offensive.
Russia has really struggled to respond, and you continue to see some Ukrainian advances in that regard.
Russia says thousands of civilians have fled the Kursk border region. A Ukrainian journalist who just returned from the seized town of Sudzha, telling VOA Ukraine's forces took the Russian town with little collateral damage.
I was surprised to see that the city itself looked very calm and literally nothing was going on. It means that the Ukrainian forces, they advanced even further from there.
The raid this month now the biggest invasion of Russia since World War II. Analysts say the strikes give Ukraine the momentum.
It now enables the Ukrainians to put pressure on Russia. It's an embarrassment for the Kremlin.
But exactly how this move will shape the war inside Ukraine remains unclear.
A lot of the forces that the Russians are using to defend against this incursion into the Kursk region are coming from Russia. They're not being withdrawn from the front line in Ukraine itself, although some small number of soldiers have been withdrawn.
Ukraine said it kept its plans secret from allies because many of them might have tried to disregard it as unrealistic. The Pentagon says the United States will continue to strongly support Ukraine's fight for freedom. Carla Babb, VOA News, the Pentagon.
We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, a Tanzanian-based innovative energy tech startup aims to provide reliable and efficient energy solutions. We'll be right back after this short break.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will receive the official nomination at the Democratic National Convention taking place this week in Chicago. Early voting in the U.S. starts in September, and the race is closed with the Republican nominee, former President Donald Trump.
We're not going back.
Join me, Vincent McCory, for an in-depth analysis of the U.S. presidential election on Straight Talk Africa.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depends on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
The World Health Organization recommends that babies be exclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life. Yet it has been reported that many mothers in Africa do not exclusively breastfeed their infants due to changing cultural norms and lactation challenges. On the next edition of Our Voices, we'll explore how breastfeeding can contribute significantly to the child's survival and look at options for new mothers to produce or get access to safe breast milk. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, health officials in Botswana are now screening travelers for Mpox at the country's entry points. Neighboring South Africa has recorded 3 deaths as a result of the dangerous strain of Mpox. Botswana's Public Health Institute Acting Director Dr. Tebeyame Masheka says travelers are required to fill out self-assessment forms at the border checkpoints. Kenyan police say Collins Jumaisi Khalucha, who confessed to killing 42 women and was being detained over the discovery of dismembered bodies in Nairobi, has escaped from police custody after cutting through wire mesh in the cell and scaling a perimeter wall. The head of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations says Khalusha escaped along with 12 other inmates of Eritrean nationality. And Africa's gaming industry is set to cross $1 billion in revenue this year. Rapid growth driven by a young population, improved internet access, and more smartphones is attracting major tech companies like Microsoft, Sony, and Disney to invest in the sector. An Africa Game Industry report says the number of gamers in sub-Saharan Africa has grown to 186 million. Charger, a Tanzanian-based innovative energy tech startup, aims to provide reliable and efficient energy solutions to meet the growing demands of companies and communities. Paul Ndiho spoke to Tony Godfrey Mela, founder and CEO of Charger Africa Limited, based in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, about his technology vision.
We are a battery as a service company. We offer battery as a service to our customer, as we understand that the energy sector in Africa, it has a huge potential in renewable energy with endless resources available. So energy is prosperity, and we decided to dive into the energy sector.
How big is this challenge in Tanzania or across the region that you're trying to serve?
Across the region, about 600 plus million people are lacking access to affordable and clean energy. And with this huge gap, we need more companies and more startups with different innovations to come in and join forces so we can actualize the energy potential that Africa can produce. Because batteries can do more than just power homes. It can also power electric vehicles. So we are looking into a transition from a battery as a service company that can provide services to different industries. So not just the energy sector, but also sustainable transportation sector as well.
When we talk about renewable energy, a lot of people don't maybe quite get it. Can you explain it in simple terms for us?
Renewable energy is energy generated without burning a lot of CO2 emissions. So that's, in simple terms, that's what renewable energy is.
Why did you decide to come up with this idea that is potentially going to change lives in Tanzania, create employment?
So what really drove us into this sector is because of the lack of access to affordable energy, especially to our communities. And we believe energy is key to prosperity, especially in Africa. So that's what really drove us towards the energy sector, and the potential in it, it's so big. And we urge even other companies to look into the energy sector and join forces, and we can do wonders for Africa. Currently, we're operating in Dar es Salaam, the main city, but we are targeting into transitioning into rural areas. So at the moment, we are gathering resources and raising capital, more capital, so we can be able to reach more communities and impact more communities.
On a scale of, let's say, 1 to 10, how big are these challenges that you're trying to solve? And at what extent do you think that by bringing this to the table, you are going to create employment, maybe help the communities that you live in?
With renewable energy, the opportunity here in Africa is endless because of the access of different resources that we already have in place. And also, as we understand, Africa is among the biggest, I would say, hub for solar energy if the potential is well tapped into and the right resources are allocated. So we believe that the opportunity is so huge, we can create thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of employment, directly, both directly and indirectly. So the energy potential in Africa is very huge, and we believe with this transition that we're seeing, especially with a lot of funds and DFIs directing investments into Africa, we believe we are on the right track.
Tell us more about this project, the Charger.
With Charger, we are looking into we're powering connectivity, from powering homes to powering communities, all the way to powering electric vehicles. So with Charger, we're seeing ourselves in the next, maybe in God's grace, in the next 10 or 15 years, becoming the unicorn in Africa, especially in the renewable energy sector, where we are empowering communities to even help their neighboring communities to power up their homes. So you can find someone, maybe one person has a solar home equipment and the other person doesn't have one. So the one who doesn't have can be supplied with the person that has the solar home system equipped in their homes.
Very nice, Tony. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
That was Tony Godfrey Mlela, the founder and CEO of Charger Africa Limited in Tanzania, speaking with Africa 54's Paul Ndiho. Be sure to watch Paul's technology reports each Wednesday right here on Africa 54, and that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.